Hey everyone, I'm Mind, and this is set number 71047, the Dungeons & Dragons minifigure series from the LEGO collectible minifigures theme. This series contains 12 different minifigures that come in blind boxes, and each individual box retails for $4.99 in the US. This series was gifted to me early for review by the LEGO group through the LEGO Ambassador Network, but all opinions expressed in this video are entirely my own. So there's 3 different types of minifigures in this series. There's just generic player characters, which are just a race plus a class. There's a total of 7 of them, and these are the first 2. We have a Tiefling Sorcerer and an Elf Bard. Then there's also 1 generic enemy creature who we'll get to when we get to, and then finally 4 different named characters at the end. For me personally, I think the generic player characters are easily the highlight of this series. To me, it just really captures what the spirit of D&D is supposed to be, and I love how customizable they are too. Because right off the bat, the biggest thing is you can see they both come with alternate headpieces. They do have a default version, which I have on the figure right now, but if the original version of the figure is more feminine, they also come with a more masculine head, and also vice versa, which you can see on the elf. The other really cool thing about all the player characters in the series is I believe there is no skin printing anywhere on the torsos or the legs. Every now and then at the top of a minifigure's torso, at the neck, you'll get a little bit of their skin color. However, it seems like they specifically decided not to do that with this series, and that's really amazing to see, because that allows you to customize these characters and make your own, race and class combinations. So if I wanted to make a Tiefling Bard instead of a Tiefling Sorcerer, I could just take this head, hairpiece, and tail and put it onto this figure and nothing would look out of place. That is so cool in my opinion, it really captures the whole create your own character spirit of D&D. And then one final thing before we talk about the minifigures themselves, I want to talk about the base plates that they're standing on, because they actually do have exclusive prints for this series. It's nothing too crazy, it's just some gray stones on each side, but I feel like that could be a really great part when building little D&D mocks, and it's also just more interesting than the standard black plate. So they went all out with this series just in general, it feels very premium. But now let's talk about the figures individually, and I'm going to remove the alternate heads for now, I will swap to them in a moment, but I want to focus on just the actual minifigures. Starting with the Tiefling Sorcerer, she's got some really cool new parts. Starting with the hairpiece, which is dual molded with black and burnt orange, and of course it's a hair-horn combo piece. It's somewhat similar to Coco's hair from the LEGO Ninjago movie, but that's only a slight similarity, it is a mostly new design. And the horns look incredible on top. Weirdly, the horns are a different color than the skin is just regular LEGO orange while they're burnt orange. I was looking up some tiefling pictures and it looks like sometimes they're depicted with horns in different colors and sometimes the horns are the same. Personally, I think the figure would have looked slightly better if the horns were the same color as the face, but it's not the biggest deal and they work well enough. And then she's got 2 all-new molded parts for her accessories too. She's got this incredible new trans-pink magic blast piece, which I assume is probably meant to be an Eldritch Blast, but it's got these 3 different bolts coming out of it and it looks so cool in the minifigure's hand. But then the other accessory is perhaps even better. She has this little baby red dragon. That's such a cute little part and it looks incredible. I would love to get that in more colors. The only printed part of it is just the little eyes, but that's a really amazing accessory to get. Her tailpiece I believe is the same one from the Avatar sets as well as Speedy Gonzalez from Looney Tunes, but the orange recolor is all new here and I think it fits her really well. And then the actual torso and leg design is probably the least interesting part of this figure, but it's still honestly really solid. I absolutely love the arm printing here with a little bit of gold armor and gold bracelets around the wrists. And that's present on the other arm too, though she has a different gold bracelet on this arm with a little blue stone in the center. Purple, lavender, and gold in general is a pretty nice color scheme, and I appreciate the dual molded legs too. It creates a really nice transition between the purple part and the black part. Here's a full look at the minifigure's face print with a hairpiece removed. You can see there's a little bit of printing representing the horns at the top, where they're detached to, but a good expression. She's got a confident smile, but it's not too intense, and very defined cheekbones too. And then the alternate face, she's super angry, which I'm so happy to see. In a lot of LEGO's themes, they have this issue where they just always give female characters 2 smiling faces, even with characters where it wouldn't make sense, like Scarlet Witch from LEGO Marvel. And for something like D&D, I absolutely want one of the faces to be an angry face regardless of the character's gender. So I'm really happy to see this here. Super intense expression and fits her really well. There's that with a hairpiece too, as well as a look at the back torso print. And then here's the alternate, more male face. Very similar cheekbones and obviously the spot for the horns, and he's got a more defined chin, but now his eyebrows are a lot bushier. This is the angry face too, which is not nearly as intense, but it still looks quite cool. And here's the happy face as well, which is just a slight smirk. So very solid minifigure overall. I do think the accessories are the strongest part of this figure, and it's definitely not the best in the series, but still pretty darn great. I really like this one. And it's also just awesome to get a tiefling in general. And then we have the Elf Bard, who I believe also has an all-new hairpiece. That's very exciting to see, because elves have kind of been stuck with the same one hairpiece for the longest time. We did recently get a couple more. There was a new one in the Rivendell set last year, and a new one in the D&D set earlier this year, but it's cool just to have more variety in hairstyles when choosing elf characters while still having the little ears on the sides. Another thing is I believe this this is our first ever elf to use this skin tone, which that's of course always amazing to see, gives you more options for customizable characters. And I think the actual design of the part looks amazing. The hair's got tons of texture to it, and white's a very fun color too. The bard also comes with this really amazing magenta scarf piece. I believe that's a recolor of Wild Styles from the LEGO Movie 2. I didn't even know that piece was still in production, so it's great to see it again. And then he's got like this somewhat elegant teal vest on, there's some gold detailing on it which looks quite nice, as well as some dual molded legs which look a bit rugged and run down. There's like a patch on one side and a pouch on the other. Both the torso and legs look great on this figure, but I feel like they're also really useful parts independently. Like this leg piece in general is really good for like custom fantasy characters. In terms of accessories, he comes with a lute, which is not a new part, but I believe this is an all new print for it. Really fancy design, the dark red looks quite cool. As well as like the standard LEGO pirate sword piece but in gold. There's a look at the back torso print, which you can see is like a very similar aesthetic to the front. Again, there's more of that gold flaking. And here's a full look at the face print too with the hairpiece removed. On the one side, he's got like a lopsided, wide mouth, open smile. And on the other side, there's an open mouth singing face, which makes a ton of sense for a bard, and I'm really glad that was included. It does make that face a little less useful if you want to customize it to be on other classes, but I think it was the right decision. It gives this guy so much more personality. And there's how that looks with the hairpiece too. Then here's the alternate headpiece that the minifigure comes with, and it's very similar to the one we just looked at in terms of expression. The eyebrows are a little smaller, the eyes now have eyelashes, and the mouth's a little bit smaller too. But the biggest difference is this version of the character is actually wearing a little bit of makeup. The most obvious is the lipstick, which is metallic blue, and that looks so good. That's a color LEGO does not use too often, so whenever we do see it, it looks incredible. But there's a little bit more, which I'm not sure how well it's captured on camera, but there is some sparkles beneath the eyes. Maybe it's more obvious if I move it up closer. Yeah, there you go. There's sparkles underneath each eye. Those are also in metallic blue, and they're very, very subtle. But that with the lipstick makes me prefer this version of the face. And that's all present on the back too. Again, we have this open mouth singing face, which is great, though this singing looks to be a little more intense than the singing on the other face. So while both face prints are good, this is definitely my preferred version of this character. And just a really good minifigure in general. Again, not my favorite of the series, but a very solid one, and one that I'm quite happy to get. Here are the next two minifigures in this series. We have a Halfling Druid and a Dwarf Barbarian. Once again, these two both do come with alternate heads, which I'm going to remove for now, but we'll take a look at in a moment. And we'll start with a Halfling Druid, who might be the best minifigure of the entire series. First off, I want to talk about his accessories and his cape. The cape is a really amazing part. You can see it's somewhat like leaf-shaped, which fits a druid perfectly. This is very similar to Zoe's cape from the first wave of LEGO Dreams. It's not the same exact piece, because Zoe's is cloth and this one's not. And Zoe's is a single color and this one's dual colored. But it is like the same exact cut, which is a very smart reuse of that piece. And it does fit this character so well. His accessories, on one hand, he's got this staff with like some leaves and a flower on top. That makes sense for a druid. In terms of parts, it's like nothing new or exciting. But I also can't be upset about it at all. Like, it's brick built, it fits the world of LEGO. And also feels like what this character would use. And then the other accessory is this little tiny bird who's absolutely adorable. The part itself's not new, we have gotten these little birds before, but I believe this is an all-new print. There's like some brown and white stripes on top of the head, and the little beak is printed too. I've loved collecting these little guys in the past few years, so I'm so excited there's a new one. And of course the druid has to come with some sort of animal, right? But now with all of that removed, here's a better look at the full minifigure. And that new hood piece is again one of the other highlights of this minifigure. It's a pretty standard looking dark green hood, though that is an entirely new mold. However, it's dual molded with tan, and he's got like this crown made of antlers on. And that has to be one of the coolest minifigure details I have ever seen in LEGO. Taking that off, there's a full look at the face print too. He's got big bushy eyebrows and like a little bit of a beard. That's a beard pattern I don't know if I've ever seen before on a LEGO minifigure, so it's a very unique looking face. Gives him a lot of personality. One side of the face you can see he's got like a somewhat awkward smile, honestly, and the other side's a more confident smirk. Defined cheekbones too, which I'm realizing most, if not all, of like the generic characters in the series have that. Okay, it's not every single one, I'm looking at one of the other ones, but it is most of them, which is somewhat interesting. I guess that might be part of the art style of these minifigures, because that's something we see on other minifigures like every now and then, but definitely not this much. But it does work, like I'm not complaining. Here's the alternate face for this figure too, which feels significantly more generic. Not a bad thing, and I love that that option's there, but of the two, I definitely prefer the male face this time around. And the alternate face here is like winking and smiling. There's how that looks with the hood on too. Torso print's really nice. I like how, I guess, nature-y it all feels. He's wearing this tooth necklace, he's got like these little feathers hanging down, two different pouches to collect things, and one has like little leaves hanging out of it, and the strap that holds the pouch continues around the back, and it's got like a little leaf hanging off of it. The little bits of like stitching too are really cute. It makes it feel like this guy's really an adventurer. He's not wearing this perfect pristine outfit, rather it's like actually been through some stuff. And then this cape piece, now that I flipped it up, you can see the color's a little bit better. The side that's normally facing the back is dark green, while the side that's on the inside is brown instead. And then this guy's a halfling, so he has dual molded short legs. Would have liked some printing there, but I think for a halfling this works perfectly fine, and I'm happy to get the dual molding. Overall, this guy's easily one of the highlights of the series for me. Definitely one of the best. And then the Dwarf Barbarian is also really good too. Starting with her accessories, she has this incredible new battle axe piece. I believe that's entirely new for this figure. It just attaches on top of a bar piece, so you can like customize the hilt if you want to. But yeah, it's this double-sided axe. And I don't think we've ever gotten an axe weapon piece like that before. This is why this minifigure series is so good, because even if you're not a fan of like D&D specifically, that's just an amazing part to have, both in fantasy settings and outside of fantasy settings. I've seen custom molding companies selling stuff like this for years, so getting an official LEGO version feels incredible. And there's room for even more customization, because there's a stud at the top and an anti-stud at the bottom. Just such an incredible part, and that's not even the only one like that in this series. There's another really cool just generic weapon, which we'll get to in a moment. Her other accessory though is just a brick built torch, which is nothing too crazy. Good accessory to have though for D&D. Like, it's a very common thing you'd be holding if you were playing the actual game. The hairpiece I do think is easily the worst part of this figure. I don't know, in my opinion it just doesn't fit the best. It's not bad per se, but I'm also pretty sure it's not new. It might be a new color, but the actual mold I'm pretty sure we've gotten before. However, the face print once again is very cool. There is defined cheekbones as many of the other characters have, but the part that I really like is that she has a scar over one eyebrow. This side of the face you can see is just like a somewhat confident smirk, while the alternate face she's very angry and screaming. Again, love that female characters actually do get angry faces here. That makes this just a useful face print to have in general. And then the like fluffy coat neck attachment works perfectly with the Barbarian's armor. You can see she's got dual molded arms with arm printing on it too, and that has more of that like same tan fur design we see in the actual part. The stitching too is such a cool detail that like didn't need to be there but adds so much, and that's present on both arms as well. With the neck attachment removed, there's a better look at the torso print. There is some printed fur at the top of the jacket where the neck attachment would go, and then she's got this really cool battle axe necklace which matches her actual weapon. Turning her around, there's more of that printed fur as well as like a horn that she has attached to her back, which I would have loved if that was a physical accessory that she could hold, but I'm glad it's on the minifigure at least. It looks really cool. And then finally, here's how the figure looks with the alternate face. The alternate face has an orange beard which does fit the hair a little bit better. However, I don't know, I can't help but see this hair as like somewhat feminine. I know it's supposed to be gender neutral and like male characters can have their hair in buns and it makes sense for a dwarf, but this hairstyle specifically feels maybe, I don't know, a little bit modern to me. That hairpiece and that face print just like don't mesh in my eyes. The alternate face too gives him like this really goofy smile with one tooth missing. So yeah, I don't know, it's still a good face print, but again, of the two I definitely prefer the female one. I feel like it makes the figure look significantly cooler. The only bad part about this figure is the lack of any leg printing, which isn't the end of the world, but I would have liked to see something there. She does use mid-legs to make her slightly shorter than just like a normal minifigure because she is a dwarf, but mid-legs can have printing like we have seen it before in like LEGO Harry Potter, and even at the very least like some printing on the waist. I don't know, it would have been nice. The rest of this figure is really detailed and really nice looking, so I can't be too critical, but yeah, I would have liked to see a little bit more there. Still a really amazing minifigure and another one of the highlights of the entire series. Coming to the next two figures in the series, these are still like generic player characters, but these two are a little bit different in that they're anthropomorphic animals. We have a Dragonborn Paladin and an Aarakocra Ranger. I think I take back what I said about the Druid being the best minifigure in the series. This guy's probably the best minifigure in the series. Right off the bat, Dragonborn, amazing like species to get. He reuses the video dragon head piece, though now in gold for the very first time. So this is what, the third color we've gotten it in, because the video released it in red and like a light blue to be like an ice dragon. And then in the D&D set earlier this year, we got it in green. So now in the minifigure series, we have it in gold, and this might be the coolest one yet. He uses metallic gold printing too for like these little scales around his eyes, and I always love when LEGO does that, like the gold printing on top of the gold piece, because the color of like LEGO's gold printing is not the same color as the gold parts. So when they're layered, like they look very similar, but there's a slight difference between them. So when you look up really close, it like brings out all this extra detail in the minifigure and always just looks so amazing. The printing in general is really good though. I like how the mouth wraps all the way around to the other side. The little nose details are quite cool too. And then the horns at the top are actually just like the standard LEGO tooth pieces. There's bar connections in the actual head mold, so if you wanted to customize those, you definitely could. So getting a Dragonborn in general is amazing. This is a really good Dragonborn face print, but the coolest part about this figure isn't even the fact that he's a Dragonborn. It's the accessories and armor that he comes with. One of the accessories you can see is this giant shield piece with the dragon emblem on it. That looks amazing. I know a lot of people are probably going to want to make like some sort of like Dragon Knight faction, and I totally get that. I'm not the kind of person who like army builds fantasy stuff, but even me seeing this, I'm like, man, I want to have like an entire army of these guys. That would look so cool. And then in his other hand, his other accessory is a brick-built mace. Now, we have gotten maces in LEGO before, but never one that looks like this. This uses an all-new molded part to be like the actual head at the top, and it's a very interesting piece. The color they chose is like the sparkly trans white that's typically associated with like LEGO Friends or LEGO Disney Princess, and it's rare we see that outside of those themes. But it makes sense for a paladin, because I could imagine that being like it infused with like radiant energy, Like, maybe this is him using Divine Smite. And in general, it just looks really, really cool. Besides that, though, it's just like a standard bar piece. They've got the Ninjago tassel at the back. Two really cool accessories, but again, that still isn't even the best part about this figure. The best part is the actual armor and printing, because wow, this looks amazing. This might be the best, like, knight armor we've ever gotten. So the actual armor piece is all new for this set, and it's very similar to the Ninjago Master of the Mountain armor piece. In fact, the actual shoulder armor seems to be exactly the same. But with that piece, the armor's only on one shoulder. This time around, it's on both shoulders, and it also extends down the front and down the back. No printing on the back, which would have, like, really solidified this as a truly incredible minifigure. But even without that, this is still really, really good. And the printing on the front looks quite nice. Like, it makes this minifigure really bulky and armored. But then with that removed, you can see the torso and leg print underneath seems like a little bit holier, which of course fits the entire idea of a paladin, which that's really cool too. It's like a double use for this minifigure. Because with the arms and possibly legs swapped out, I feel like that can make for a pretty cool, like, cleric or something too. And I love, like, the little blue necklace that he has. But now we have a better look at the arm and leg printing too, and wow, look how nice this is. So much detail here, and like every single surface is printed. There's like some breaks in the armor plating, and you can see the chainmail underneath on both the arms and the legs. And the leg printing does go all the way around, like there's even shoe printing too. No dual molding, but this is like the kind of figure that doesn't need it. It feels as detailed as it could possibly be. And with the armor on top too, this just looks spectacular. Also, the entirety of the torso and legs is metallic silver, which is a somewhat rare color for LEGO to use. We do see it every now and then, but they usually opt for matte colors if they can. And especially the metallic silver hands are super exciting to get, because that's a very rare part. It came on like one video figure previously, and it was in one dream set this year, but now that they're on this minifigure, they're significantly more accessible. And as a Ninjago fan, that's very exciting to like get to be able to use those for like a casual Zane. But in general, I think they're useful parts to have, so I'm glad they're easier to get. The more I look at this minifigure, the more I'm sure that this is easily the best one of the series. Unfortunately, he does not come with like an alternate headpiece like the more humanoid characters do. That would have been like really cool if he did, but I entirely understand why he didn't. This is a really complex molded part, and also the animal heads aren't like inherently gendered. LEGO does tend to put eyelashes on more feminine minifigures, but you could definitely interpret both of these characters like however you want. And then the Ranger Aarakocra is also quite good. Not nearly as good as the one we just looked at, but still a really cool minifigure to get. The headpiece is an entirely new molded part for this figure, and he seems to be based off of a bald eagle. The wings, I think, also might be new. If they're from somewhere else I'm not remembering, please let me know in the comments. But I think these are like the most avian-seeming wings we've ever gotten, and they make this minifigure stand out quite a bit. Getting a little ahead of myself though, in terms of accessories, he comes with like this dark tan bow piece as well as this little tiny dog. The dog is the newer puppy piece that was introduced like a year or two ago, and I believe this is our first time getting it in gray. And that's amazing to see, because the puppy piece in general is very cute, so I'm happy to get more variations. The bow, by the way, I believe is an all-new recolor for this figure. It's a newer piece that was just introduced last year for Hawkeye in the LEGO Marvel minifigure series, and so far we've only gotten it in black and brown, so dark tan's an entirely new color. Anyway, with that removed, we have a better look at the torso and the leg print. The torso, once again, honestly really good. I like the burnt orange armor with like the green scarf on top, and then the leg piece is the one that's of course also used for like the Demogorgon. And that makes a lot of sense for an Aarakocra. It does make the legs more bird-like. The printed talons at the front look amazing, and there's a good transition from the torso into the legs. I appreciate too that the torso is kept somewhat generic so you can still use it for other minifigures. Obviously you'd have to get a leg piece from somewhere else if it's not going to be an Aarakocra, but that is in general a nice looking ranger torso. Around the back too, you can see the little scarf continues, there's a nice little pouch and a knife. Overall I like this one. I'm very happy to get the Aarakocra head and wing piece. I will say the rest of the figure is probably one of the weaker ones of the series, but that's probably because these new pieces obviously are so big, but still happy he's included and definitely one of the ones I like. Here are the next two minifigures. We have a Githyanki Warlock and we have a Mind Flayer. The Githyanki Warlock is our final just generic player character, and then the Mind Flayer I believe is the only like generic enemy character in this series. Starting with the Githyanki though, this is a very interesting looking minifigure. Right off the bat he has yellow skin, which is pretty accurate to like how they actually look, but it's just weird to see a licensed character with yellow skin because of course that's also LEGO's just like generic unlicensed skin color. But as such, that actually makes this hairpiece very, very useful. Now I believe this is a recolor of the elf wizard hairpiece from the full-size D&D set, which is great to see we're getting another variant of that, but it's extra cool to get the yellow elf ears here, because we don't really get, like, yellow-skinned elf characters too often. Like, obviously we get Christmas elves, but I don't know if we have, like, any yellow fantasy elves. Maybe there was one in a minifigure series once. So if you're someone who prefers yellow minifigures to realistic skin tone minifigures, this could be a figure that's worth picking up just for that hairpiece. Because yeah, you just put that on a normal minifigure head, and there you go, you've got an elf. but it also does a pretty good job to represent the Githyanki. I will say the face print on both the main face and the alternate face are a little bit weird, because the way they're designed, they just kind of look like normal LEGO yellow minifigures, but with like some tattoos on their face. Comparing this to like how the species is actually supposed to look, they look a lot more like alien. So I think they could have done a bit more with these, maybe given them different colored eyes and also move the mouth down a little bit, because it seems like they have very long faces, which just isn't really captured here. This is a good enough representation, but I don't know, when I look at this, I just see like an unlicensed yellow minifigure with face tattoos. I don't necessarily see this as like a unique fantasy species. You guys have to let me know what you think of the printing in the comments, though. And then the actual face design for both the main face and the alternate face, I mean, it's good. Fairly generic expressions. I do like the little bit of facial hair in the male version, that's interesting. But yeah, nothing too crazy. There's how the alternate head looks with the hairpiece, too. The face prints are easily the weakest part of this figure, but the rest of it is really, really phenomenal. Starting with the accessories, first there's a staff with an eyeball on top. That's incredibly goofy, but I absolutely love that. The eyeball piece is really good, too. I feel like certain mocks will be able to utilize that well. And it certainly helps to communicate that, like, this is meant to be a warlock. But then the even cooler accessory is what's in the other hand. This is an all-new knife piece that we've never seen before. And similar to the battle axe and the dwarf, this is the kind of thing I see custom companies make all the time. So it feels strange to see it as an official LEGO piece, but it looks great. And you do get an extra of it with this minifigure, too. That piece might be my favorite single individual piece in this entire series. Just an incredible new part, like I cannot believe that's real. And then the armor, torso, and legs here all look really nice. The color choices are great. I think the brown looks amazing with the dark blue. And I love the sort of like dark blue swirl pattern that's on the torso, and the necklace with like the purple gem in the center. Turning this figure around too, again, some really cool things going on. There's a potion stashed back here as well as a little key. Just like with a lot of the other figures in the series, this is a perfect like generic fantasy torso and legs. It works really well for a D&D warlock, but it can work in so many other contexts too. I think this one's pretty great all things considered. The knife is easily the best part, but the rest of the figure's pretty solid as well. And then we have the Mind Flayer, who comes with a little brain with legs as an accessory. Now I believe this is meant to be an intellect devourer, and it's a single, like, very silly little part. Its little legs allow it to stand on 4 different studs, and then you can see there's also an anti-stud in the center on the inside. That's so you can actually have this attach itself to a normal minifigure like this, and that's such a cool concept. Their eyes are completely covered, but you can still see their mouth. One of my favorite pieces as a kid was the Alien Conquest alien that could attach to a minifigure's head, so I'm really glad to see, like, that same idea carried over in this thing. And it does just give you way more options for both posing and play. It's honestly a really cool little accessory. But then the Mind Flayer itself has this crazy new molded headpiece. So much detail to that, like look at the texture around the back. It looks incredible. And then it's wearing like the silver armor with a long black cloak. The actual dress piece is honestly pretty useful because it's fairly generic, like there's not too much going on there. I feel like there's a lot of custom figures that would really appreciate that part. But then if I remove the head, you can see the torso print a little bit better. And that metallic silver armor looks great. And I love the way it comes over to the arms too. Of course, arm printing is always something that's appreciated. Very elegant looking around the back as well. I will say the printing on this figure does feel like one of the more simple ones of the series, but I'm not gonna lie, they do a pretty good job of like capturing the Mind Flayer's look. I think I would have liked some sort of neck attachment here, either a physical armor piece or like a long cape. Looking at pictures, it seems like Mind Flayers do sometimes wear capes, and I think that would add a lot to this guy. Or even something as simple as like the Ninjago Legacy Skulkin armor. That's a small thing, but I feel like it would just give the figure a little more bulk, make him a little more ominous, a little more intimidating. However, both of those are fairly easy customizations to make, so all things considered, I'm fairly happy with this. It's just with how good the rest of the minifigures in the series are, this one just isn't to the same level. That being said, the head mold's pretty spectacular, and I really love the accessory. There's just a little bit of room for improvement. And finally, we come to the named characters in the series. There's a total of 4 of them, and here are the first 2. And I'm gonna say right off the bat, I'm gonna be less familiar with these characters as opposed to just the generic ones. I'm starting off with these 2, Strahd and Tasha, because these are characters I'm somewhat familiar with, but the next 2 I'm hearing about for the first time with this minifigure series. So if I miss a detail or something that you guys recognize, feel free to point it out to me in the comments. Starting with Strahd, though, they did make him a very cool minifigure. Strahd's whole thing, of course, is that he's a vampire. And vampires aren't something we get like a ton in LEGO, so it's cool to see that represented. Again, if you're not a fan of D&D, this is still a very cool looking vampire minifigure. The face print especially is incredibly useful. You can see on one side of his face, he's got this super angry expression, and those fangs are super prominent. While the alternate face looks a lot more confident, but still very evil. He just has a standard dark blue cape out the back, nothing special about that. It is just a paper cape, like not cloth or anything. And that hairpiece, I know that that hairpiece. I know we've gotten it before, but I cannot for the life of me think of where that hairpiece comes from. So I'm not sure if black's a new color for it, but it does look really good. Like, it fits this character super well. And then the torso and leg print are beautiful. He looks like so regal. Very like high class, very powerful. And I think the bright red contrasts with the gray skin super well. His accessories are nothing like too crazy. He has this big sword, which is a very cool part, but I don't believe that's new. And then a standard like transclear chalice piece. He also comes with a black rat with red eyes, which is a very cool new version of that part. And then somewhat hidden beneath his cape, he does have arm printing. You can see there's a little bit of sand blue fur on the torso, and that continues over onto this arm. I really appreciate that consistency, and that color adds a lot. And on the other arm, instead of that fur, he's got like metallic silver armor instead, and that looks quite nice as well. So super cool minifigure overall. I will say in general, I definitely prefer the unnamed characters to the named characters, just because it feels like there's more you can do with them. But if they're going to do named characters, Strahd makes a ton of sense, and it's cool to just get a vampire in general. I also really like how they did the eyes, like the red with the black circles around them. That's a smart way to do solid color eyes without them looking somewhat uncanny like some minifigures have. And then Tasha's quite cool because while she is a named character, her outfit's like fairly generic, so you can very easily turn her into a generic character, because despite everything, she is like a wizard at her base, so you could swap out her face and use her as a generic wizard, so I like that that option's there. The hat-hair combo piece, though, is a really amazing part. That's actually not new for this minifigure. I think it is a new color combination, but that was actually originally made for Video Year 2, and then it was cancelled, and then it was brought back in the Hocus Pocus set, so because of that set, they were able to use it on this minifigure, and I think it looks so cool, especially with the flowing hair at the back. It makes it feel like she's channeling like this magical energy and causing like wind to blow around her. I'm getting a little ahead of myself though. Let's talk about the accessories first. She has this cauldron that just has like some trans pink fire inside of it. That trans pink fire isn't new for this set. I believe it comes from LEGO Dreams originally. So it's cool to have like a cheaper way to get it, but it's not like too crazy of a part. And it also just sits in there loosely. So you have to be careful with that. If you're like moving this minifigure display stand around, it can very easily fall out. And then her other accessory is a little spell book. That is a printed part, which is very nice to see. Of course, all parts of minifigure series are printed, but the prints in comparison to how it looks in the full-size D&D set, where I believe there is one in that set and it's stickered. And if we open it up, you can see there's a little spell on the inside. Now this is very cool because it's in the same style as the spells from the full-size D&D set. That one came with quite a few, and this one looks similar, but it is exclusive to this minifigure. And there's like this writing underneath it, and then like this laughing face. I assume that's because this spell is meant to be Tasha's hideous laughter. That explains the laughing face and the fact that it comes with Tasha. And that's really awesome. If the LEGO D&D theme continues, I would love if like these become a collectible. Like different sets come with different spells. And I think it's so smart to have a spell that's themed around her come with her minifigure. With that removed though, we now have a better look at her minifigure. She does have arm printing on both sides with like these belt buckles like around her wrists. And I guess she's all about her belts because she also has 3 around her waist too. Taking her hat-hair combo piece off, you get a better look at her torso and leg print. And these are honestly really nice looking witch's robes. That red gem in the center ties everything together super nicely. And the dome-molded legs are a small detail that adds a lot. There's the back torso print too, where you can see the belts continue around. She's got a little pouch back there. And here's the alternate face too, where she's actually laughing. And there's how that looks with the hairpiece. Also, I don't know if I showed Strahd's back torso print, but let me show you that real quick. There you go, he actually has a little printed cape, which is cute. But yeah, another really good minifigure. I will say her accessories are probably the weakest part. I mean, it's cool to get the spellbook, but in comparison to some of the other figures in the series, they're not, like, as exciting. But the minifigure's great, and it's still one I'm quite happy with. And finally, here are the last 2 minifigures in the series. Again, 2 more named characters, and as I said, I'm not familiar with these 2. I'm just learning of them for the first time with this series. But we have Szass, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, as well as the Lady of Pain. Starting with Szass, he is a Lich, and once I realized that, I was like, okay, actually, this minifigure is very cool. My favorite part has to be this accessory that he's holding. It's just like a regular LEGO minifigure skull, but it's in trans red instead of white. That's so wacky to see because, of course, the classic LEGO skeleton has been coming in sets for years, and I never expected to get a version of it like this. But that part looks amazing, and I love that they didn't go for like a more realistic skull. They just went with the classic LEGO skull for this. That's such an incredible part. And then his other accessory is just one of the Power Blast pieces. This one's in trans orange. If you've never seen one of these before, you push in on the side and that'll cause it to shoot out. They're also just cool looking parts, so it's nice to get that here. The face print on this guy I think looks great. It's this tan skeleton with like these vibrant red eyes. And it looks like he has something carved into the top of his head, too. Of course, there is no alternate face on this figure, though there is a back head print. You can see, like, the other side of whatever's carved into his head, and a line that comes all the way down. And then, like, the red and gold robes that he's wearing, I think, look nice. My favorite part definitely is the ribcage that you can see underneath everything, but the actual gold and red robes do look nice. They just feel a little bit flat, especially compared to some of the other minifigures in the series. I mean, compare him to the Lady of Pain. She's got so much more detail in that torso. This isn't bad per se, it's just a little simple. There's the back torso print as well as back dress print too. Again, not too much going on. There's some nice gold detailing. But yeah, I don't have too much else to say. I do really like this guy, and it's cool to get a Lich of all things. He just doesn't really feel like he's at the same level as most of the other minifigures in the series. And then finally, the Lady of Pain. I don't know how to feel about this one. From initial impressions, this was easily my least favorite of the series, but the more I look at it, I'm like, this is objectively a very good looking minifigure. Like, the torso and dress piece are so incredibly detailed. I love, like, all the little tiny bits of gold that come down the dress, and how they use multiple shades of orange too. That looks really nice. The new molded headdress piece too is incredibly detailed. Like, that is a really amazing new molded part, and it is like a mask, so you can take it off. Unfortunately, there is no face print underneath, but if you want to replace that with a different minifigure head, you can. Really awesome new cape piece here too. It's similar to Calendar Man's from the LEGO Batman movie, though this one's a little bit longer. And you can see the back of the dress is actually as detailed as the front, and it transitions so smoothly from the torso into that leg piece. I also appreciate that she comes with this clear piece to hold her up so that it actually looks like she's floating through the air. And then she only has one accessory, but it is actually pretty cool. It seems to be a cubic gate, which is honestly a pretty cool D&D item to get. So yeah, I don't know how to feel about this one. I guess she's not like as exciting as the others to me because she's not something I'm super familiar with, but I have to acknowledge objectively, this is a really cool looking minifigure. The torso and legs especially are really good parts, but the rest of it's honestly as good as it's going to be. Like, that is an amazing mask piece. So I don't know, you guys have to let me know what you think in the comments. But now, overall, what are my thoughts of this minifigure series? I am super happy to say this. I think this is my favorite minifigure series in years, and probably in my top 3 of all time. Genuinely, this minifigure series has almost everything I could possibly want. My one criticism is I would have liked more like generic characters and less of the named characters. The named characters are cool, don't get me wrong, but I feel like in a 12 minifigure series, I am just left wanting so much more. This is one of those series that easily could have used 16. I miss when minifigure series had 16, man. Like, this would have been awesome if it was the 16 series. But if that's the biggest issue with the minifigure series is that there's not enough of it, that means that, man, it's pretty darn good. This series also does a great job at, like, justifying that $5 price point, because minifigures went up to $5, what, like 4 years ago at this point? And that's bothered me ever since, because it just feels like way too expensive for a single minifigure. And a lot of the time, CMF just, like, aren't that detailed. They're the same kind of minifigures you'd get in a retail set. These, though, they all do a great job to justify their price. I'm pretty sure every single minifigure in this series has sidearm printing, side leg printing, an exclusive new mold, or multiple of those all at once. And there's not a single one where I feel like any corners were cut. Like, maybe I would have liked to see some leg printing on the Barbarian and on the Druid, but that's really not the end of the world. Like, they both still look quite good. But no, overall, I genuinely really love this series. The LEGO Master Network was kind enough to send me 2 copies of the series. Like, I have 2 full sets, and I love the series so much that I'm planning on still buying more. I think I probably want to buy a 3rd set, and then even more of, like, the figures I like the most. Like the Dragonborn especially, I want to get 4 or 5 of. Oh, and another thing I love about this series is all the, like, generic characters, and none of their classes overlap with the characters from the D&D set earlier this year. So if you have the set and you have the series, they go great together, because then you have 11 unique different classes. There's only a few that are, like, kind of double-ups. Like, there's a wizard in the original set, and Tasha's technically a wizard, but Tasha's not in the series to be human wizard, she's here to be Tasha. And then the villain of the full-size set is a sorcerer, and there is a sorcerer in this series, but again, that was the villain versus one of the heroes in this series. So yeah, really cool that those two go together. I genuinely love this series so much. For D&D fans, I think it's spectacular, and even if you're not a fan of D&D and you just like generic fantasy stuff, there's still a lot of these minifigures that I would highly recommend. But of course, those are just my thoughts. I'm super curious to hear what you guys think of this series in the comments below. Which minifigures are your favorite, and which ones are your least favorite? My absolute favorites are probably the Dragonborn and the Druid, but I'm looking at them right now, and honestly, most of them are contenders for favorites. Like, they're all genuinely quite good. And then my least favorite probably would be the Lady of Pain, and that's not because she's bad, it's just because she's the one I'm the least interested in. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to my channel if you're new. And if you didn't see my review of the full D&D set earlier this year, I'll have a link in the description as well as in the pinned comment. But as for this video, I think that's about all I have to say, so thanks for watching everybody, I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new. Thanks for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!